Hi, I'm Parneen Jaggi, and in this video, we're going to be taking a brief overview at the characters present in the novel Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens. Now, as we know, Oliver Twist was published in 1838 as a full fledged novel and was extremely well received and accepted as well as criticized in both England and America. And it is a tale of an orphan boy who goes through several trials and tribulations in his life to become independent. Now, when we talk of the setting of the novel, the main action of Oliver Twist moves back and forth between the two worlds, the filthy slum world of London and also the clean, comfortable house of Mr. Brownlow and Maylies. Now, the first world is unpleasant, it is real, but is frightening, while the other is idealized, it is romanticized, almost dreamlike in its safety, security, and beauty. The world of London is a world of crime. Things happen there at night in dark alleys and in abandoned dark buildings. So we can find examples of this kind in chapter 15th when Oliver is kidnapped, and again in chapter 26th when Fagin meets monks. Such kind of a darkness suggests that evil dominates the world, and the novelist often uses weather conditions to aid in the setting of such a scene. Now, Oliver Twist, in the case of this novel, we see unpleasant things, bad things happening in bad weather. And in contrast to Fagin's London, the sunlit days, the fragrant flowers of the Maylies' cottage, or the handsome library at Brownlow's team with goodness and health. Now, when we talk of the important characters, because it is a huge portrait gallery of characters, but in this novel, in this video, we're going to be talking about just the main chief characters that play a leading role. And among those, the protagonist is Oliver. And Oliver is an orphan boy born in a workhouse, and Dickens uses his situation to criticize actually the public policy towards the poor in 1830s England. Oliver is somewhere between 9 and 12 years of age when the main action of the novel occurs. Though treated with cruelty and surrounded by coarseness for most of his life, he himself is a pious, innocent child, and his charms draw the attention of several wealthy benefactors who do good to him. His true identity is actually the central mystery of the novel, that in such a filthy environment also he emerges as a pure soul, innocent soul. Then we have this conniving career criminal by the name of Fagin. Fagin is actually a man who takes in his custody homeless children and then trains them to pick pockets for him. He is also a buyer of other people's stolen goods, and he rarely commits crimes himself. He prefers to employ other boys and other people to commit crime for him and often suffer legal retribution in his place. And Dickens' portrait of Fagin displays the influence of anti-Semitic stereotypes, and Fagin has become an immortal character of Dickens even today. Then we have this young girl named Nancy, who is one of Fagin's former child pickpockets. She is also Bill Sykes' lover, and her love for Bill Sykes and her sense of moral decency come into conflict when Sykes abuses Oliver. Despite her criminal lifestyle, she is among the noblest characters in the novel. In effect, she gives her life for Oliver when Sykes murders her for revealing Monk's plots that we will see when we go into the plot overview of the novel. Then we have a very kind character, Rose Maylie, Agnes Fleming's sister, raised by Mrs. Maylie after the death of Rose's father. A beautiful, compassionate, and a forgiving young woman, Rose is the novel's model of female virtue. She establishes a loving relationship with Oliver even before it is revealed that the two are actually related somehow. by birth. Then we have this gentleman, a kind, courteous gentleman, Mr. Brownlow, a well off, wealthy, erudite gentleman who serves as Oliver's first benefactor. Mr. Brownlow owns a portrait of Agnes Fleming and was engaged to Mr. Leaford's sister when she died. Throughout the novel, he behaves with compassion, common sense, and emerges as a natural leader. Then we have a character named Monks. He again belongs to that filthy, sickly world. He is a vicious young man, prone to violent fits, teeming with inexplicable hatred. With Fagin, he schemes to give Oliver a bad reputation, so he schemes a plot against Oliver. Then we have this boy named Bill Sykes. He is a professional, a harsh, brutal burglar, brought up in Fagin's gang. Sykes is Nancy's lover, and he treats both her and his dog Bullseye with a combination of cruelty and grudging affection. His murder of Nancy is the most heinous, the most unpleasant, the rudest, crudest of the crimes that occur in this novel. Then we have this Mr. Bumble, who is actually representing the church here, the pompous, self-important beadle, a minor church official for the workhouse where Oliver is born. Though Mr. Bumble preaches Christian morality, he behaves with compassion towards the paupers under his care. Dickens mercilessly satirizes his self-righteousness, greed, hypocrisy, and folly, of which his name is an obvious symbol. Then we have Agnes Fleming. Now, this is the name of Oliver's mother, although she is not alive in the novel. After falling in love with and becoming pregnant with Mr. Leaford, she chooses to die anonymously without being known in a workhouse rather than stain her family's reputation. A retired naval officer's daughter, she was a beautiful, loving woman, and Oliver's face closely resembles her. Her portrait is mentioned in the novel, her name is mentioned in the novel, but she is dead before the novel opens. Then we have Mr. Leaford. Now, Leaford is actually Oliver and Monk's father, who dies long before the events of the novel. He was an intelligent, high-minded man whose family forced him into an unhappy marriage with a wealthy woman. He eventually separated from his own wife and had an illicit love affair with Agnes Fleming. He intended to flee the country with Agnes, but died before he could do such a thing. Then we have other minor characters like Mr. Osborne. Now, Mr. Osborne is the family physician of Mrs. Maylie. He's a hot-tempered but a good-hearted old bachelor. He's fiercely loyal to the Maylies and also looks after Oliver very well. Now, Mrs. Maylie is a kind, wealthy, older woman, the mother of Harry Maylie and adoptive aunt of Rose Maylie. Then we have Harry Maylie, who is her son. He's a dashing young man with grand political ambitions, career prospects, and he eventually gives up to marry Rose. Then we have this another important character, the artful dodger. He is the most clever, the most cunning of Fagin's pickpockets. His real name is Jack Dawkins, but he is known as the artful dodger. Though not older than Oliver, the dodger talks and dresses like a grown-up man, and he is the person who introduces Oliver to Fagin. Then we have another pickpocket in the gang of Fagin, who is Charlie Bates, and Charlie is ready to laugh at anything he can see. Now we have some more characters, in fact many more characters in the novel, like Aunt Old Sally, who is an elderly pauper who serves as the nurse at Oliver's birth. We have Mrs. Corney, who is the matron of the workhouse where Oliver is born. We have No Claypole, who is a charity boy and Sowerbury's apprentice. We have Charlotte, who is Sowerbury's maid. We have Toby, who is one of the gang members of Fagin. We have Mrs. Bedouin, who is the housekeeper of Mr. Brownlow. Then we have the dog, Bill Sykes' dog, who is called Bullseye. We have Monk's mother. We have Mr. Sawbury. Now, Mr. Sawbury is the undertaker to whom Oliver is apprenticed. We have Mrs. Sawbury. We have Mr. Grimwig. We have Mr. Giles, Mr. Brittles, Mrs. Mann, Mr. Gamfield, Bet, and so on and so forth, about whom we'll be talking while we move on with the discussion of the story. So stay tuned for the next videos on the synopsis of Oliver Twist. Thank you for now.